Hello and welcome into the RotoWire Fantasy Soccer Podcast. My name is Andrew Laird, Senior Soccer Editor of RotoWire, joined once again by Ryan Belongia today to talk about Wednesday's England versus Denmark showdown for the final UEFA Euro 2020 semifinal slate. Ryan, we were just casually talking about yesterday's slate, Italy and Spain, and I feel like from the touting, backslapping method, we should take credit for the Morata sub goal. We kind of expected him to start, but when he didn't, he became kind of that perfect sub upside play. And so I'll take the backlash slapping on that one.
Yeah, definitely. The top 8 finishes in the main GPP were all unique, and they all had Morata. He ended up being 3.5% owned, quite high for a sub. So yeah. Other people appear to like that strategy as well. I got a few things wrong about that game. I guess my love for Italy sort of clouded the fact that, we've kind of been avoiding teams against Spain because they're so good at possession and it's tough to get a lot of floor points against them. And I just ended up with too much Insigne, too much Verratti, and then consequently not enough Spain for the most part. I thought it was one of the tougher showdowns just because, especially when the lineups came out, you weren't entirely sure who was going to take set pieces. You're not entirely sure who's going to get sub first on either side. I think today's England-Denmark game is much easier. So excited to talk about that.
I think the thing that gets me about yesterday, at least, is like we knew that Spain would have a lot of possession, and yet I didn't put it together. Like that obviously means like as much as Spain has the ball, Italy cannot produce fantasy points, and I underestimated that too much. So that that's simple, and yet it's just I just like looked beyond it because I was like, oh no, Italy score fantasy points and Spain just kind of passes the ball around, but like fundamentally, if one team has the ball a lot, the other team's not going to have many opportunities for fantasy points.
Yeah. Same thing happened to me. It was a weird showdown in a lot of ways. Like Danny Olmo was going to get subbed for one right before he got the assist. And it's also possible that Chiesa was going to get subbed right before he scored. Yeah. And then both teams ended up making changes. So they ended up as the top 2 scorers. That was a big swing too.
Yeah, that's all it is. All right. You described this England-Denmark showdown as much easier, which I don't know if that necessarily says it's easy, but it is much easier, we'll say. Okay. So understandably, England favored at Wembley. I don't think anybody is really playing in cash. I don't think anybody's playing for a Denmark win. But we have talked about how like England haven't really produced a ton of fantasy points in their games, like floor points at least. They don't take a lot of shots, so they don't put a lot of shots on goal. They don't create a lot of chances. The quarterfinal game was a little different. They just kind of blew it off. Amazing what happens when you put Jadon Sancho on the field. But we also don't know if he's going to start this one. It seems like Gareth Southgate's more comfortable, at least over the course of the tournament, playing a more defensive style. But Denmark, like we love for floors. And so does England pull kind of a Spain tomorrow or yesterday of, do they have enough possession where we don't get enough fantasy points from Denmark?
Yeah, it could be that way. So I'll just sort of explain why I said it was easier. And that was just because, we have a big favorite with England who hasn't allowed a goal yet. They have a keeper that's relatively cheap. And we know sort of where their fantasy points are coming from. We also have a pretty good idea of who gets subbed, and that's kind of the same for Denmark. We know sort of where their floor points come from. We know what subs they make. So that's part of what I mean by just it's easier, and then also it's easier from a GPP point of view to know that England's going to be very popular. England stacks are going to be very popular. Yep. Clean sheet stacks are going to be very popular. Pickford's going to be very popular. So, I mean, it's very easy to just play one of the Denmark strikers and not Jordan Pickford and make lineups that way. I'll definitely be making quite a few lineups that play for a Denmark goal, quite a few lineups without Pickford, just because of how popular he's going to be. So it's not easy, obviously, because Denmark has to score. It's not easy to win, but it's at least easy to figure out a strategy that will be unique in GPPs, at least more unique, because I think we're going to see like a lot of the same sort of lineups.
I agree. I think there's going to be just a ton of duplication, and it's all going to be England. And I think what's kind of good about this slate is you don't have to play for a Denmark smash to get that different. Like, I think there are going to be enough people playing England that one or two tweaks could be enough to get unique, or at least high enough in the leaderboard that if Denmark do score, then most likely the Pickford lineups are dead. At least in terms of winning GPPs.
Yeah, I agree. Stacking Denmark is probably not needed and very hard to be optimal probably too. So yeah, we were talking about constructions yesterday. If you're playing for a Denmark goal, like a 3-3 construction is fine. I mean, you're going to want England players too. It does, like you were saying at the start, it does seem hard for 5 Denmark players to be optimal. For instance, I mean, there would have to be multiple goals. Of course, it's possible, but yeah, probably not necessary to build lineups like that.
Yeah, the 5-1 Denmark stack is probably going to be pretty low owned. So if all you care about is ownership, then I suppose that's where you go. But just looking at like the team stats on our cheat sheet here, just the teams couldn't be any more different for floors. England, I think I said this on the quarterfinal slate. They must have been on this, but like Denmark average almost as many shots on goal as England do shots, like total shots. And we know that England is just not a high scoring team usually. They're coming off a pretty big win, but I don't know. It just seems like even a 5-1 England stack doesn't seem like that's going to be the optimal, because there are just not a lot of fantasy points that are coming out of any of the English attackers, at least. I mean, we can talk about their defenders in a little bit, and Pickford is going to be popular, but I don't know. It seems like to actually maximize fantasy points, you're going to need multiple Denmark pieces, because that's just kind of how they play.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think those stats, like you make a great point with those stats. So yeah, not only is the Denmark is cheaper, they're going to be less popular, and they also possibly get more floor points. So it just all makes sense, yeah, to play a bit more Denmark in your lineups. Like you said, it could be optimal, and it also could be optimal from like a game theory or strategy perspective as well.
It just seems like it's possible, because England aren't like a high possession team like Spain. So we do expect Denmark to have the ball. It's not crazy that Denmark, if you just look at floor points, that Denmark actually outscores England tomorrow. But obviously the goals matter. Like England is expected to score more goals, but from everything else, shots, crosses, chances created, like it just seems like it's possible that Denmark scores better in a lot of spots.
I agree. Like, I'm not expecting England to just come out and dominate. And I mean, I think people might think that just by looking at the odds and just by looking at what they did to Ukraine or remembering that game if you watched it. But yeah, they're still going to need goals. And also Denmark's actually a decent team. So I think it's like a more even matchup from like a fantasy point perspective, especially. The odds, like England are big favorites. Yeah, they're at home and haven't allowed a goal, but it doesn't mean like they're big favorites to score all the fantasy points.
Right. Exactly. So diving into salaries and where everyone is, England obviously are priced way up because they're the favorite. I mean, it's not surprising that all of these guys are expensive. Do you think Mason Mount is actually the most popular captain on the slate, as like presumably the set piece taker for England?
That's a good question. Yeah, I would think like the most. I always struggle to know who's going to be the most popular captain. Yeah, he will be among them. Mount, Kane, Sterling, maybe even Shaw, Pickford. But yeah, from the attackers, Mount seems like I guess an optimal sort of captain in a cash build, and that usually leads to him or those players being popular in tournaments as well. So yeah, I'd expect Mount to be very popular. I mean, and he should be.
Yeah. I was so those of you who are listening to the audio version of this won't be able to see this, but I have the cheat sheet up for our video here, and it's currently sorted by price. So we have all the England guys who are extremely expensive: Kane, Sterling, Mount, Foden, Sancho, Shaw, Grealish, and then we get to Kasper Dolberg as the highest priced Denmark guy. But if you sort it by floor points, it's like the exact opposite. It's like all Denmark except for Mount. And so that's kind of like Mount is going to be everywhere in cash. So don't I think he's the cash captain and you kind of go from there. But, and I think it's probably going to be a ton of Mount, Kane, Pickford lineups, and you can kind of captain whoever you want in there. But I think that's basically where everyone goes. And given the floor points that Mount provides also, I'm not sure needs to be faded in GPPs either. It's just like you just play him with a little more Denmark, or maybe fade Kane and try to get the goal elsewhere. But I don't know. It just seems like Mount is just going to be popular everywhere.
Yeah, it does. And, like you said, he should be. That chart is pretty wild that you have up there with Denmark having all the floor points and then just Mount. What I will say is Mount was very close to busting against Ukraine.
That's true.
He finished with, let's see, 7 floor points without the assist. And he took two corners, I believe. So yeah, I guess it's in previous spots like this, I just loaded Mount. I mean, close to 100% ownership, but I've sort of stopped doing that because I see paths where it doesn't happen. Yeah, he definitely has the highest floor, but on the set pieces that weren't corners, I mean, he wasn't even standing over them. It was Shaw and Sancho. I mean, that was a little bit worrying. Yeah, I still think he's the best play, not considering ownership. But I'll fade him in a few spots too, I guess is my point.
Yeah. So we have a comment here from Matt, who is in our Discord. Matt's a GPP player, and he brought this up yesterday, actually, considering a Denmark stack. And because that's how he thinks. If everybody's going to play England, let me go play Denmark. And he said he was going to do a 4-2 Denmark stack, but he seems like you could even do a 3-3. I love this question. It says you can do a 4-2 Denmark or even a 3-3 build and just hope for a 1-0 England win and captain the English goal scorer. So theoretically you could captain Kane and then go a heavy Denmark lineup. I love that idea.
I love it too, so much so that I'm looking at a bunch of the lineups that I've made so far. They're in blocks of 5, and I have those exact lineups. I also have 4-2 Denmark lineups, 3-3 with Kasper. So yeah, Matt, I love that strategy. That's what I'm gonna have quite a few lineups like that too.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of the reasonable probability that a 5-1 England stack works. And
Yeah, sorry.
They
Go
just
ahead.
have to blow the doors off of Denmark for that to happen, and you have to get all the goals right. But like I'm just really struggling seeing that from a floor perspective. Even like you need the England guys to get on the score sheet because they're most likely not outscoring the cheaper Denmark guys that are that you're also possibly considering.
Yeah, so I agree. Partly. I don't know if
Okay.
they have to blow the doors off. Like, let's just take a 1-0 England win. You have Mount, and let's say a goal scorer and the assist. So that's 3. Pickford would be 4. A clean sheet would be 5. And, you run it back with like Striger Larson or something. So 5-1 stacks are in play still. I think they'll be super popular. But like I agree, the part that I agree with you about is they need that goal and they need that clean sheet, or else the floor points like aren't there, and then Denmark seems more viable.
Makes sense. Absolutely.
So
So
like 2-0, sorry, 2-0 England win. Like 5-1 stacks are clearly in play, but
okay.
otherwise, I think you'd want to have some Denmark.
Right. So the lineup obviously is kind of up in the air. We don't know if Sancho is going to start. Saka is a little banged up, but it seems like all the local English media thinks Saka might start. But we'll know lineups beforehand. But realistically, is the pool of players from England Kane, Mount, Sterling, Shaw, Pickford, and then one of Saka, Sancho?
Yeah, like, and I'm glad you listed them off like that too. Like the last one you kind of threw in there, Saka. I mean, that's a guy I'm looking at if he starts, because he's likely to be the 6th most popular out of the England, right. and he's also cheaper than all those guys. So if I'm targeting England, I like that. Like you said, I think Mount will be popular. Shaw, Sterling, Kane, Pickford. Like those are the 5 plays, I guess, that people will be on.
And pretty much everybody else, I mean, I think they're just fillers. Like Rice and Phillips, Calvin Phillips, since that first game, has been useless for fantasy points. To the point that Rice is now more expensive than Phillips. Walker like never does anything. And for GPPs, I feel like every time I think Walker, I'll never consider Walker. Then all of a sudden he gets that like once in a blue moon assist or something. Maguire's obviously like a huge target in the box. Like I think you can play him, but I don't think any of those guys are like priorities. And I mean, we mentioned 6 of 11 guys that are probably going to be popular. So, the other ones I think are fine. I think if you're trying to play center back roulette, like Maguire will definitely be higher owned than Stones. So there's that. And they're just as likely to score,
I think Maguire will be semi-popular. Yeah. Considering his price and that he just scored, and that, I mean, we said he was a better play than Kyle Walker last time and he scored. Declan Rice and Phillips, you're right. Like I'm going to try to avoid rostering those guys. I think people will maybe have them in some stacks just because they're cheap and they let you afford more England. Declan Rice almost scored last game. So I guess I would prefer him to Phillips just because it seems like maybe he'd be less popular because he's more expensive and got subbed, and because of Phillips's history. But I'm not trying to go to those guys. I like your call though of Stones over Maguire, because I never play Stones over Maguire, and I never play Stones over Laporte or Ruben Diaz on City either, and other people I think feel the same way, and it's for good reason, because he's not as likely to score as Maguire, but he still can, and he still gets his head on crosses, and he'll be definitely less popular. So I like maybe going to him to try to get a little bit more different or unique in some of the chalkier England lineups.
Yeah, I mean, neither of them are going to have good goal odds. Let's see, Maguire
No.
850, Stones plus 1,000. I mean, it's not even that different. Not that goal odds are everything, but yeah, I mean, if you're going to go for a punt goal, like take the guy that nobody else is playing because everybody's going to try to go to the other one. There's really not much thinking in that. It's a very basic idea. But why would I play Declan Rice or Calvin Phillips if I can play similarly priced and probably cheaper attackers from Denmark?
I mean, yeah, you wouldn't unless like it's a lineup with Pickford, unless it's a clean sheet lineup. Oh, sorry. Phillips and Rice.
Like if I'm going to play Phillips at
32.
Is he that cheap? No.
Yeah, 32. He's the cheapest England player.
Yeah. Sorry, I had my. Yeah, so it was more like, why would I play those guys as opposed to the Denmark guys? Like, is it possible that England scores? I mean, it's obviously possible England scores early, but it just seems like if Denmark has to chase this game at any point, they can chase. Like they know how to do it. And so
no, I definitely agree. They're just like the England guys are cheaper. I mean, like I still think like 5,400 for Højbjerg and 4,800 for Delaney. Like that seems too expensive. Like,
okay, that's fair.
If you're just comparing them to Rice or Phillips, but Striker Larson and Mela are decent prices. Like, and you see, it's tough with Denmark because you want to run it back with these guys, like even like a Damsgaard, but he needs to get involved in a goal, or like it might not even work. So, like when it all depends on the construction. Like that's why I see these England stacks being popular, because like it doesn't necessarily make sense to play some of these cheaper Denmark guys unless they score. So I guess in those type of lineups, then I would play them.
Striker Larson and Mela were like the first two guys in my lineup. And it was less that I'm like, I need Denmark, but like I thought they were the most reliable floor guys. I've been burned like so many times by Brathwaite, Damsgaard, and Dolberg. I get wrong like every slate. And so it just seemed like the two guys on the wing were the most consistent. The minutes worry me a little bit, particularly with Striker Larson, but I think they probably outscore whoever England has on the other side. Right.
I feel the same way. They stuck out to me. I think they'll be relatively popular, at least on from the Denmark side, and they should be. And Striker Larson, the minutes worry me a little bit there too. So like we're going back and forth here, and these decisions are tough. That's why I think it just really makes sense to have a score in your head and when you make the lineups, because then you sort of don't have to make these decisions, or I guess when a goal is going to happen too, like a player, Luke Shaw for instance, who's going to be popular, and he should be. We talked about Luke Shaw last time, like we almost turned it into a Luke Shaw appreciation podcast. I saw actually they were interviewing him at halftime of the Spain game, and he was talking about how Roberto Carlos followed him on Instagram, and the teammates are starting to call him Shawberto Carlos. He had an interview last week, I'm sure people saw, where he was talking about how he wished Bukayo Saka was his son. I mean, all jokes aside, though, he's got all the confidence in the world right now, and like he's a great player, so of course he's going to be popular. But the way I'm going to use him, at least, is I'll have him as a run back on Denmark, lineups where I think Denmark, or where I'm playing for Denmark to get a first half goal.
Yeah.
And then maybe on my England lineups, I won't have him. And like if England get an early goal, it's very possible that Shaw doesn't end up on the winner. So like when I like players, but they're going to be popular, I'll just like let the lineup sort of make the decision on whether I play him or not, or how I think or how I need the game to go for that lineup to work.
That is like a brilliant way to think of it. I don't think I've ever thought of it that way. That working off of a score idea and what has to happen for that, and then once you do that, the player pool immediately gets smaller. Like if you think this game is 2-1, you're probably not playing Pickford or Schmeichel.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably not playing these center. You're not playing defenders, at least for clean sheets. And so, but maybe play them for a goal over the, Rice or Phillips or something like that. But you're right. It's, man, that is brilliant.
Well, thanks. I think that that's like a good place to start when decisions are tough and when outcomes are so variable. Like you said, it kind of eliminates some things for you and highlights some other things for you. You just like think about what's going to happen if, this team scores in the first half or the second half, or just what the final score is going to be and how it's going to get there. If you think about it that way, lineups become much easier to make.
Do you think Shaw and Mount are basically the ideal Denmark goal run backs?
I mean, yeah, I do. It like seems like that's going to be popular. Like that's what I have right now, but not as many people will play for Denmark. But yeah, I think those are the. I'll look for. Like I said, that I'll look for some way to try to get a little bit different. But like I said, I made some 4-2 lineups, and just initially they have Mount and Shaw as the run back. It just makes sense with how they play.
Yeah, I wonder how many people overlook the fact that those guys are going to be the ones creating all these chances, and they actually think that Kane is the right run back.
Yeah, okay.
Not to say Kane's a bad run back, but like that you're going to, and obviously Kane only needs like one action to make that work, but it's also the least likely action to happen amongst the three of them.
Yeah, I do, that's a tough one too, because I do sort of like Kane as a run back, even just because like you don't, even though if your lineups have Schmeichel, you don't need him to have a clean sheet. And even if Kane doesn't score, he had, the highest floor on England last game. And we're pretty sure that at least I think, I think he did. And yeah, you can just afford it. And I think he's like guaranteed 90 minutes. And if they're chasing the game, he's going to be taking shots. He's going to be getting shots assisted. So just from like whether it's optimal or not, I do like see the possibility of Kane, though he's always so popular. But like, that's one where I could see, again, in an optimal like lineup, Mount would be a better run back than Kane. But I can see like fading Mount for ownership reasons and having like a Kane run back or even a Sterling run back.
I was gonna say, do you think Sterling is like really overlooked because everybody just wants to play Kane and Mount?
I don't think he'll be overlooked in like England lineups just because he's been scoring goals and he's starting to, he's gotten quite a bit of hype and like rightfully so. Yeah, no, I don't think he'll be overlooked with so many people on England, but I think he'd be overlooked in Denmark lineups for sure.
Okay. That makes sense. I mean, just for everything we were saying, he really doesn't make a ton of sense as a run back.
Right.
Other than he could score. But
pretty much. Yeah. Like you don't really, it's harder to see Sterling outscoring those other three England players from a floor, or outscoring them from a floor perspective.
Right. So how do we choose amongst these extremely frustrating Denmark forwards that I've gotten wrong the entire tournament?
Oh man, I've gotten them wrong the entire tournament too. For the most part, yeah, especially Brathwaite. I don't have anything on, whoever really. Like
I agree. There's just
I would, if I'm just like deciding between one, again, I'm just going with Brathwaite because his floor is higher. I mean, probably, but more so because I'm more confident about his minutes.
okay.
Like much more confident about his minutes. Not that like that's too big of a deal, especially if like Dolberg will play the whole first half. So of course he can score, and I would assume he'll be less popular just because he's more expensive and because of that. But I don't have a take on either of these guys. I'll play all of them, and I'll play Damsgaard too. But like, just from like a game theory perspective, like I don't like, I'm not partial to them for any reason.
Yeah, I think that's the toughest part for me is it's like, oh yeah, let me get a Denmark forward. And then now I need like a 3-sided coin and I just pick whoever ends up there. Cause nothing really differentiates them for me. I mean, Damsgaard's minutes are probably the least likely to be consistent, or most likely to be the lowest. I'll put it that way. But he's also the cheapest. So like,
he's also the cheapest, and maybe he has a better floor definitely than Dolberg. Well, actually, I don't know. I should be careful saying stuff like that, but it seems like it. He's cheaper and more of a creator. Again, I think they're all good plays, fine plays. Whoever you like, whoever fits in what you're doing.
Is it reasonable to play multiple Denmark forwards?
Yeah, I think so. Just because of the like assist. If they score one of them assists, like the guy who gets the assist should score 10 points too. So yeah, it's a tougher path, but I think it's okay. I know I'll end up doing it like just sort of because there's no one else to play in some lineups. Like your pool's really narrowed down if you play for specific outcomes.
Right. Who's today's Murata?
Ooh, sub is tougher today. Definitely. It's tough to know who's going to come on for England. So like the scenario I would play for, the one happened that I don't play for last night, which is the other team scores and then the sub comes on. That's fine too. The scenario that I play for is like 0-0 in the second half. England, need a goal and are trying to score, and they take off Sterling, Sancho, not Kane, but like, they have in the past. So it would be, I don't know, Rashford, you could make an argument for Calvert-Lewin, but like, I should say too, I don't love subs as much because it's like, it's tougher to predict in this game. And I feel like he will play the guys like Kane and Mount. I don't expect them to come off. I expect Sterling to play, a decent amount too. So yeah, Rashford, Grealish, Foden. I don't know. Like it's a tough one. I'm going through it now, and you don't love it because you just don't know who's going to come on. So again, my advice, I guess, would be this: play the guy who's going to come on. If you like think who's going to come on, or like that's the guy I would play. But it's tough. Sorry. If you want a Denmark sub, I mean, Paulson will come on. Now I don't want to play a Denmark sub, but like, I guess I haven't considered it, but you could. I mean, England goes up 1-0, lineup without Pickford, you play Paulson or something like that. I'm just sort of throwing random strategies out there, but it seems like it would make sense. I don't know.
It was much easier yesterday because.
Sorry.
I was going to say it was much easier yesterday because we had two teams that sub their forwards a ton, and we saw a bunch of rotation. I mean, like Murata and Moreno were starting earlier in the tournament, and then all of a sudden they weren't in. It's like you probably knew they were coming in. We made the point that if you want to play a sub, I think we were actually using it for Italy, but like you play Belotti because he could come on for Immobile, and you want the sub to have goal upside. Like we're not coming in for a center back. We're not pulling another defensive midfielder off the bench. Like you want a guy who's going to score, and the guys most likely to score in this game are starting. Like, and are most likely staying in the game, at least from the England perspective. Like you want whoever comes in for Kane. But if we think Kane's playing 90, then it's not there. Like I love the idea of Rashford. Maybe he comes in for Sterling or something like that. I think Rashford's probably more likely than Calvert-Lewin, but it's like such a long shot. But I mean, I guess Foden could be a scorer. Like I just don't see someone like Grealish or Sancho actually scoring.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a good point. When we yesterday's game, Morata was guaranteed to come in, basically.
Yeah.
Like you said, even Moreno too, and then Berardi and Belotti, and they all can score goals. So those are just like easier plays. Like you said, if this is England, I'd target the guy who's going to come in for Saka or Sancho or whoever starts in that position. So, if I had to pick one, maybe a Rashford or a Foden or it's tough. Wouldn't hate it too if you just don't play any subs on this slate.
It definitely seems like a less viable sub slate than yesterday.
It's a reach, yeah. But they'll instead of Morata was 3.5% owned, you can get a guy at 0.5% owned tonight, most likely.
Right. Yeah, it'll be very, very low.
Something. I mean, and again, it's just one of those things. I was thinking. I mean, it's when that game is 0-0. I mean, I wish I had subs, I guess is what I was thinking last night. So if it does happen, I mean, this game goes 120. You're just sitting so good if you end up having a sub in those spots.
So if this is scoreless after 120, double goalkeeper seems like it probably worked out. One of my lineups yesterday that cashed was I had Simone and not Donnarumma. It was I don't think it was an Insigne captain. I can't even remember at this point, but it was basically like an Italy lineup. But I had Simone because I was like, I think he's going to outscore the similarly priced Spain guys.
Yeah.
So I did that. Schmeichel is not dirt cheap, but he's cheap. He's kind of in that Delaney, Maguire, or actually Stones is cheaper. So do you think Schmeichel does enough? Like if Schmeichel concedes, do you think those lineups are dead or
no?
It feels like it is. Like we were talking about how if England score, they're probably not like taking a ton of shots and pouring it on. So Schmeichel ends up there with like a 1-0 loss with maybe one save. But do you see a path where he works out even if he concedes?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
I think, like you said, he's cheap enough. Not dirt cheap, but cheap enough. And if the opposite happens, where England don't score till the 85th minute and they're firing shots until then, absolutely. And just the guys in that range around him are not good. So there's like a lot of there's scenarios where he can score 6 points and be on the winner. So it's okay. Like even you can play double keeper lineups too in like a 1-0 England win. That works too.
For full disclosure, one of the lineups I put together had like 40. What is Schmeichel? Yeah, 4,600 left. And I put Schmeichel in, and I'm like, I actually am just going to duplicate this lineup, but instead of Schmeichel, I'm going to put Maguire in, because if Maguire does anything, it like directly crushes Schmeichel. Like, either scores a goal or he gets a clean sheet, and so it was almost too easy to do that.
Yeah, great point though. I'm doing similar. I'm going to do some similar things. It's like they're basically the same price, so it's a really good sort of just make both lineups sort of thing.
Right. Anything else? Did we forget anyone that we should have talked about?
I don't think so.
I still just love this idea of build lineups to the score. I don't know why I don't. Maybe I kind of do it. It's more I consider the bigger range outcome or the lower range outcome. So like the dominant clean sheet win or the close clean sheet win, but I just don't. And it's less of like the whole lineup that I'm building around that, and more just like, okay, if England get a clean sheet, then I need Pickford, and if I just end up on Maguire, like that's fine because I get the clean sheet, but I don't build the rest of the lineup enough like that, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's not something that I've always done either, but I sort of used to do just more like you said, but I've started to get more specific with it, and I think it tends to work out better, or at least it makes if you're thinking very specifically about it, it sort of it makes your decisions easier and usually better. At least I think so. Yeah, it's a really good starting point, like a template to go by here.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much everything I do is like fundamentally I want to reduce the player pool to as small as possible so that I can just make good lineups, and that's the easiest way to do it. Only took me until the second semifinal to finally get this information. All right. If anybody has any follow-up for me or Ryan, you can find us in the RotoWire Discord, which is open for all subscribers. Just go to rotowire.com/chat to get in there. If you're not a RotoWire subscriber and want to try us out for free for 10 days, just go to rotowire.com/soccer trial. Gets you access to the entire site, all the sports we cover. So if you're getting ready for fantasy football season or baseball in the middle of it, that's all there. And you also get access to that Discord chat. If you've been watching this on YouTube, if you could please hit the like button below. And if you're listening to the audio version, if you could please like or rate and review it wherever you listen. Ryan, good luck tomorrow. Thank you for all of that information. And we will be back later this week to talk about the final, which is on Sunday between Italy and who you got?
England, if I have to pick one, England 2-1.
2-1. All right, love it. All right, good luck, everybody.
Thanks, Andrew. Good luck, everybody.